In the Avatar universe, it's kind of accepted that benders are just overpowered. Let's be completely fair here. If you're able to control the blood in somebody's veins, if you're able to blast fire from your hands, or if you're able to just cause earthquakes to happen, what chance does a normal person have against somebody like that? Hell, even Legend of Korra Season 1 went into that aspect with the Equalists. Well, in Avatar Legends, there's mechanics in place to help kind of prevent the power creep that comes from benders and non-benders and just weapons users in general. So what's up, everybody? My name is Chris, and today we're going to be talking about how weapons are balanced in Avatar Legends to make sure that the weapons players are still having a lot of fun in comparison to, the bombastic, awesome abilities that are bending. Now let's start with combat. Non-benders and benders in combat are actively pretty equal. Not even talking about technology and everything that you could do with that in the Korra era, but even just non-benders with a sword, a boomerang, or a club are able to keep up with benders because a hit's a hit. In this game, a strike counts as a strike and it does the same amount of damage no matter what. In the same way, a bender does the same amount of damage no matter what. Sure, you can say you use combustion bending or use blood bending to do these things, and your GM might have special effects based off of whatever techniques that you learn on that aspect. But unless you're using a special technique or a master technique, your basic moves are all gonna do the same. A water blast, a fire blast, an earth boulder, all of them are gonna do the exact same damage as just a sword. And honestly, I think that makes a lot of sense. Within the Avatar universe, we see people getting hit by these things all the time. People are resistant to those. I can't really say the same about swords. Everybody gets stabbed the same, I'm just saying. And let's keep in mind here, a non-bender doesn't mean that they're untrained with these things. A non-bender is still able to do all these badass things that the firebenders or earthbenders are able to do. They just don't have magical abilities helping them with that. You're still gonna be able to parkour, you're still gonna be able to wall run and all these things. Now, if you're a firebender or an airbender, you might be able to justify those things a little bit more. But in this case, if you're just a badass ninja who's able to do these things, that's what you do. You're able to do them, and you might not even have to roll depending on your skills and training. Or you might actually have to roll a skills and training check. It depends on your GM. I can't stress this enough. On a mechanics level, everybody's the same. Nobody's better than another just because of their bending or non-bending aspects of them. The character sheets reflect who your character is and kind of what they do in this aspect. The bending and the non-bending is kind of just flavor thrown on top of it. How do you as a waterbender justify doing this move versus you as a firebender or a non-bender? Or even if you use technology, you have a lightning glove that blasts fire and water. Mechanically, everybody's equal. It's RP-wise that I think things begin to fall short because I'm just gonna say it. We put bending on a pedestal, and I get why. I don't like it, but I get why. It makes sense that somebody who's able to blast fire from their hands seems more useful than somebody who's just good with mechanics or stuff like that. But that's different skills and different skill sets. A firebender who knows nothing else about fighting other than just blast fire isn't gonna do well in hand-to-hand combat. We saw in the Avatar series that Ty Lee is able to knock everybody on their ass. Mai, just with knives, is able to knock everybody out just by throwing knives and pinning people to walls, all right? Ty Lee literally stops people from bending because of chi blocking. And if there's not chi blocking in the full game, I'm gonna riot. Though I do think they're actually gonna add that in an expansion. I don't know though. It's something that they didn't really say on in the comments. I wish they would though. Hey Magpie, if you're watching this, you want an interview? You wanna talk about this stuff? I would love to have you on here. No? Okay then. But all in all, combat-wise, everybody is equal. Everybody's on the same footing. It's genuinely just gonna be the RP section, which is what we're gonna talk about now, and how we can help our non-bending players feel useful. Still, even in RP sessions, which are probably gonna be a lot more in this game. On the surface level and mechanically, there's no benefits to using bending versus using swords or technology, but as you start playing the game and as you start RPing, there's a lot of benefits that come with bending versus, just using weapons or tech. What a couple of those look like are just benders are able to just do their abilities. You don't have to question or have a role for an earthbender just wanting to lift rocks to make a chair. There's no role for just making a tent. You're just able to do the thing. There's no role for a firebender just starting a fire because that's what they do. That is the entire purpose of that type of training and that type of fighting style. But with a non-bender or even somebody that's not a firebender in general, you're gonna have to make a roll to see if you can't start a fire. If you can't just make an earthbending tent, you might have to make a roll to set up camp or stuff like that. So it seems kind of stacked against non-benders, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it kind of is. Mechanically, everything lines up because no matter what, a hit's a hit's a hit. If you hit with a fire blast, it's gonna do the same amount of fatigue or conditions that hitting them with a sword will do. But once we start getting into the RP, that's where it kind of changes. Because in one of my games, there was a chase scene that happened where two of my players were running from some guards. The guards were firebenders, and they're using their firebending to kind of blast themselves around and kind of speed up. Contrast that to the earthbender and my non-bender player that were both running from them. The earthbender was at a significant advantage compared to that non-bender because the earthbender was able to use his training and use his earthbending to use a pillar to launch himself up and over the wall, whereas my non-bender had to make a roll. He had to roll with his skills and training to try to make an athletics or a parkour check so that he could get over the wall. And again, the firebenders just blasted themselves up and over. There was no roll needed for them. but the non-bender needed a role. That's one of the things I've noticed that kind of gets pushed out of the way when it comes to this discussion. Mechanically, there is no difference between a firebender, an earthbender, or even a non-bender. But when it comes to the RP and it comes to what you do, you tend to have to call for a role for a non-bender more than you will an earthbender or a firebender. I don't necessarily think that's a problem. Mechanically, I think it means that a non-bender is gonna have a harder time in RP situations versus anybody else. But I also think that there are ways that we can work around that. Because in this game, there isn't such thing as inventory. You don't have an inventory checklist of like, you get these amount of items. You don't have, pittons, you don't have dungeon crawling maps, you don't have all these different things that you would typically have in like a D&D or Pathfinder-esque game. And on a bookkeeping side, that's fantastic. There's not a need to keep track of all these different things, but that also means that we don't have a fire starters kit on your person unless you talk to your GM about that. And that's something you're gonna have to do in this case. Now, the example of starting a fire, anybody that's not a firebender would need a fire starting kit to do that. You need to know how to find flint, find steel, and just snipe it together like Minecraft. I referred to an actual survival situation scenario as Minecraft, my God. But that's something I think we're gonna have to pay more attention to as non-bending characters and as non-bending NPCs. In a world full of benders and full of these people who can do these awesome things, how are we keeping up? Well, we can't just go next door and ask the firebender to light another fire. We're gonna have to have our own flint and steel to do these things. We can't just ask the waterbender to help with this. We're gonna have our own water jugs that we can do. Now that's stuff that we would typically have anyway. But as GMs, I feel that's gonna be part of our job to make sure that our players are able to do those things. If our players know that they're gonna be going out into the wilderness for a month or two, or maybe even a couple years, sure, we know they're gonna find another town, but their characters don't know how long that's gonna be. Their characters would have stocked up on these things. So if your non-bender wants to start a fire, sure, let him. He has fire starting materials on him. You're gonna have to roll with your skills and training to make sure that you can snap it right, but you would still have those things on you. Or if they insist that, no, I wouldn't have found those things, or I wouldn't have thought about that, let them roll to see if they can't find those things in the wilds. Let's see if they can't find a natural flint deposit in the ground, or find some, just hard rocks that'll work for steel, stuff like that. Those are some things that we can do to help facilitate our players and make them feel almost as equal as their non-bending counterparts. They're bending counterparts. They're non-benders already. They're bending counterparts. It's something I hope the main rules will genuinely dive into a lot more than it does in the quick start, because at this point, it almost entirely favors, benders in every way, shape, and form. Mechanically, as GMs, there's nothing we need to do to make our non-bender players feel relevant and feel useful to the party. RP-wise, that's what we're gonna have to work on. We're gonna have to create scenarios for our non-bending players to feel useful, feel relevant, let them use their connections, let them use their unique talents as non-benders that maybe the other benders aren't gonna be able to figure out. Sure, a firebender is gonna be useful in helping forge a sword, but if he doesn't have the skills to actually hammer the sword down, it's useless. So with that in mind, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, click that subscribe button, click the little bell icon down below to get notified for my video uploads. And a massive thank you to my patrons. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. So thank you all. And a massive top tier thank you to my top tier patrons, Amaldine Shepherd, Rutana, Connor Kendall, and Evan A. You guys are the reason I'm able to do this. Thank you all so much. I love every single one of you. And if you guys want to see more behind the scenes content, if you want some extra added goodies behind the scenes to all of this, or you want to thank you at the end of the video, be sure to check out my Patreon down in the description down below. With that in mind, I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Later, everyone.